I'm going to tell you something that still feels unreal when I say it out loud. 4 months after we broke up, she texted me out of nowhere. Not, hey, not, can we talk? Just, I'm pregnant, it's yours. And for about 10 seconds, my brain actually went quiet. Not because I was excited, not because I was scared, but because I already knew something she didn't. I had already seen the truth. So I stared at the message, and I remember thinking, okay, so we're doing this. Because when someone sends you a text like that, there are only two possibilities. Either they genuinely believe it's yours, or they're hoping you'll panic, accept it, and start paying before you ask any questions. And the crazy part? Her next message came right after, like she'd rehearsed it. We need to talk about co-parenting. I don't want drama. I want us to be mature. Mature. That word almost made me laugh, because I knew I was about to watch someone try to build a whole lie on top of a foundation that doesn't exist. So I responded with one line, no emotion, no argument. Okay, I'll need a paternity test. And bro, it was like I dropped a match into gasoline. She replied immediately, "What? Are you serious?" Then, "How dare you doubt me?" Then, "So after everything, you think I'm that kind of person?" And that's when I knew. This wasn't about a baby, this was about control. Because a normal person who's telling the truth would say, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." But she didn't. She started attacking me, guilt-tripping me, talking about manhood and responsibility, and "I can't believe you'd do this to me." And in the middle of all that, she dropped the line that confirmed everything. You need to step up and be a man about it. Step up for a child she was claiming was mine, a child she was already planning to use like a weapon. And I'm not gonna lie, at that moment, I didn't feel angry. I felt focused, because I wasn't guessing. I wasn't confused. I wasn't hoping she was lying. I already knew. And what she didn't understand was I wasn't about to argue with her. I was about to end this with proof. So I told her again, I'm not discussing anything until there's a test. And she sent one last message that still makes my stomach turn. If you do this, you're going to regret it. I read that and I just thought, yeah, one of us is going to regret something. And it wasn't going to be me. Before I go any further, I need to explain something about me, because without this, none of what comes next makes any sense. When I was 11 years old, I was diagnosed with cancer, leukemia. 2 full years of my childhood disappeared into hospital rooms, chemo sessions, radiation treatments, and that constant smell of disinfectant that never really leaves your memory. I was in and out of school, in and out of wards, watching other kids play while I learned words no child should have to know. I survived, obviously. I wouldn't be telling this story if I didn't. But survival came with a price. When I was 16, my oncologist sat me down with my parents and explained what the treatment had done to my body. The chemo had saved my life, but it had also destroyed my fertility. Permanent damage. In simple terms, I can't have children. They explained it gently, the way doctors do when they're talking to a teenager whose life has already been flipped upside down. At that age, it didn't fully hit me. I was just happy to be alive. But over the years, it became real. I didn't just hear it once and forget it. I got tested again and again. At 16, at 22, at 28. Every time, the same result. No sperm. 0. A medical term I never wanted to know, but know by heart now. Azoospermia. So when my ex texted me saying she was pregnant with my child, I didn't need time to process. I needed time to understand what game she thought she was playing. And here's where it gets even messier. She knew about my cancer. She knew about the treatments. What she didn't know, or what I never explicitly said, was that I was sterile. Not because I was hiding it, it just never came up. We dated for 2 years. Kids weren't something we talked about seriously. And when you've lived with something for over a decade, you don't always think to announce it unless it matters in the moment. So from her perspective, maybe she assumed I was fertile. Or maybe she knew exactly what she was doing and hoped I didn't have proof. Either way, the facts were on my side. This wasn't opinion. This wasn't emotion. This wasn't a he said, she said. This was biology. Which is why I didn't argue with her, didn't yell, didn't threaten. I just started documenting everything. Texts, voicemails, messages from her family. Because when someone reacts that aggressively to a simple request for verification, it tells you everything you need to know. And sure enough, things didn't calm down. They escalated, fast. To understand how this spiraled the way it did, you need to understand what our relationship was actually like. On the surface, it looked fine. We didn't fight every day. There was no cheating that I knew of at the time, no scream matches. But there was a pattern. Everything slowly became about her. At first, it was small stuff. She always picked where we ate, always chose what we watched. If I suggested something different, she'd sigh like I was being difficult. She didn't like my friends, said they were a bad influence, even though nothing was actually wrong with them. She didn't like how often I saw my family, said I was too attached. Anytime I talked about work, especially things she didn't understand, she'd zone out, then somehow bring the conversation back to herself. I didn't see it as control back then. I saw it as compromise. That's how it usually works. The breakup itself wasn't explosive. I told her calmly that I didn't see a future together, that something felt off, and I didn't think it was fair to keep pretending. She cried, called me selfish, said I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. Classic breakup script. I helped her move her things out of my apartment over the weekend. No yelling, no drama. We hugged goodbye. And that was supposed to be it. Until that text. And here's where the character framing really matters. When I asked for a paternity test, she didn't respond like someone who wanted clarity. She responded like someone who had just lost control of the situation. She didn't say, "Okay, when?" She didn't say, "I understand." She attacked my character, accused me of being heartless, accused me of abandoning her, accused me of not being a real man. Then came the voicemail. Her voice was shaking, not with fear, but with anger. She said I was humiliating her, that I was treating her like a criminal, that she'd given me 2 years of her life and now I was betraying her when she needed me most. And I remember sitting there listening to it, thinking, this isn't about a baby. This is about her realizing she can't bully me into compliance. So I saved the voicemail, because something told me this wasn't going to stay private. And I was right. After the voicemail, things shifted. Not toward reason, toward pressure. She started texting every day, long messages about how stressed she was, how scared she was, how she couldn't believe I was doing this to her. Then the language changed. It stopped being about us and started being about obligation. She said things like, "You don't get to just walk away from this. A real man wouldn't question this. If you don't step up now, everyone will know who you really are." That last one stuck with me, because that's when I realized she wasn't trying to convince me. She was trying to threaten me. I kept my responses short, almost boring. "I'm willing to pay for the test. Let me know when you're available. We'll talk after confirmation." That's it. No emotions, no counterattacks. And that made her angrier. Then her mom got involved. One afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was her mother. She said she was disappointed in me, that she raised her daughter better than this, that running away wouldn't make the responsibility disappear. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have things to say, I did, but because I knew responding emotionally would only fuel the narrative she was trying to build. So I stayed quiet. And that's when she escalated again. A week later, I opened my mailbox and found another letter. This one wasn't handwritten. No flowers, no soft language. It was from a law firm, a real one. The letter said she was pursuing legal action to ensure financial support for the child, that my refusal to accept responsibility showed a pattern of avoidance, that the court would not look kindly on my behavior. They were actually trying to legally force me to take responsibility for a child that biologically could not be mine. And that's when the situation stopped being uncomfortable and became dangerous. Because at that point, this wasn't a relationship issue anymore. This was a legal one. And if I handled it wrong, it could follow me for years. So I stopped waiting. And I made my move. The moment that legal letter showed up, I knew something important. This wasn't going to end with a conversation. It was going to end with paperwork. So I did the one thing she clearly didn't expect me to do. I called my oncologist. Not to explain the situation, not to ask for advice, just to request my records. Every document connected to my cancer treatment, every fertility test I'd ever taken, every official result that had my name, dates, and signatures on it. They told me it would take a few days. 3 days later, I had everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Diagnosis records from when I was 11, treatment protocols, follow-up reports, and most importantly, 3 separate sperm analyses, at 16, at 22, at 28, all with the same conclusion: azoospermia, 0 sperm count, medically incapable of fathering a child. I didn't feel relief when I saw it. I felt calm. Because now this wasn't my word against hers. This was medical fact against a story. So I drafted a response. No insults, no emotion, just clean, professional language. I explained that I was biologically incapable of fathering children due to childhood cancer treatment, that this had been confirmed repeatedly over 15 years, that I was attaching verified medical documentation. And then I ended it with one sentence. I suggest your client identify the actual father of her child. I sent copies to her lawyer, to her, and I saved everything for myself. Then I waited, and for the first time since this started, everything went quiet. No texts, no voicemails, no letters. Her mom, who had been texting me almost daily, silent. Her lawyer, silent. My ex, completely gone. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe once they saw the records, someone with sense stepped in and shut it down. But here's the thing I've learned about situations like this. When someone's entire plan collapses, they don't always retreat. Sometimes they double down. On the 9th day, I got another letter from her lawyer. Different tone this time, still polite, still professional, but colder. They said they disputed the validity of my medical records, that they wanted independent verification, that their client maintained she had no other partners and stood by her claim. And then the line that made my jaw tighten. They advised that I submit to court-ordered testing to resolve the matter definitively. They were pretending biology was a debate, pretending 15 years of medical evidence was somehow optional. That's when I called an actual lawyer, family law, experienced, no nonsense. I explained everything. He listened quietly. Then he laughed. Not a chuckle, a full, out-loud laugh. He said, "They're buying time." According to him, this wasn't about truth anymore. It was about pressure. If they could drag this out long enough, force court dates, paperwork, stress, maybe I'd settle just to make it stop. So he drafted a response. Not emotional, not aggressive, but firm. It stated that my medical records were verifiable through licensed physicians, that pursuing a paternity claim despite evidence of sterility could constitute fraud, and that if they continued, we'd seek recovery of legal fees and damages for harassment. In plain language, bring it to court if you want, you're going to lose, and it's going to cost you. That letter went out on a Tuesday. By Thursday, the conflict stopped being legal and started becoming personal, because that afternoon someone knocked on my door, and when I opened it, it was her sister. I almost didn't open the door, but when I did, I could tell immediately this wasn't a confrontation. She looked exhausted, eyes red, not angry, just broken. She asked if we could talk, 5 minutes, said she wasn't there to fight. I let her in, but I stayed close to the door. She sat down and started crying before she even said anything. The first thing out of her mouth was, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." She told me my ex had sworn to the entire family that the baby was mine, that she was confident, convincing, certain. Her parents were already talking about being grandparents. Her mom had bought baby clothes. Then she saw the medical records I sent. She looked it up herself. Azoospermia. 0 sperm count. No miracles. She told me she confronted her sister that morning, and that's when the story cracked. My ex lost it, started screaming, accused everyone of turning against her, said I'd poisoned the family. Then she kicked her own sister out. That was the first time I felt something close to relief. Not satisfaction, validation, because up until that moment, everything had been happening behind closed doors, letters, lawyers, threats. Now other people were seeing the truth. But it didn't stop there. 2 days later, my landlord called me. He said someone had contacted him claiming I was running an illegal business out of my apartment, that I was dangerous, that there had been complaints. It was nonsense. He knew it. But the fact that she'd gone that far told me everything. Then a message came from a number I didn't recognize, a guy from her workplace. He said she'd been telling people I got her pregnant and abandoned her, that she was asking coworkers for money, donations, baby items. He asked me one question: "Is any of this real?" I replied with one sentence: "I'm medically sterile and have documentation proving it." His response was, "Holy crap, I'm telling everyone." By the next week, 3 more coworkers reached out. One even sent me a screenshot of an email she had sent to the entire department asking for baby items because the father abandoned me. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, because at that point, this wasn't just a lie, it was a campaign. And campaigns collapse fast once enough people see the truth. Things unraveled fast after that. A few days later, my phone rang again. It was her sister. Her voice sounded different this time. Not shaky, just tired. She said, "It's all coming out now." Apparently, someone at my ex's workplace had posted in a neighborhood Facebook group asking for recommendations for a family lawyer, a complicated paternity situation. The guy who posted it? A project manager at her company. Mid-30s, married, 2 kids. And once you line up the dates, everything made sense. The affair had been going on for months, while my ex and I were still together. The timing of the pregnancy lined up perfectly with him, not me. Here's the part she didn't plan for. After I sent my medical records, she panicked, started texting this guy non-stop. Messages like, "You're the only other person it could be. We need to talk. You can't ignore this." He ignored her, which meant his wife saw the messages, and that's when his life blew up. His wife kicked him out. Divorce started immediately. According to people at their job, he went from confident manager to ghost in about a week. But he wasn't taking responsibility. He told everyone my ex said she was on birth control, that she claimed the baby wasn't his, that she tried to pin it on me first. Basically, everyone was a victim, except the people actually lying. Around the same time, I got another call from her sister. She said my ex had switched lawyers. The new demand? She wanted to sue me for emotional damages, for humiliating her, for sending my medical records, for proving the baby wasn't mine. I wish I was joking. My lawyer's response was simple. Truth is an absolute defense. If she files, we countersue. Then came the final attempt, a letter from her new legal team. No threats this time, just a proposal. She'd drop everything if I wrote a formal apology, paid her $15,000 for emotional distress, and signed an NDA promising not to talk about this. $15,000 and an apology for defending myself against fraud? We declined, firmly. And that was it. A week later, her lawyer sent one last message. Our client acknowledges that paternity claims were made in error. No further action will be pursued. Made in error, like it was a typo. That was the last legal message I ever received from her. No apology, no explanation, just silence. A few days later, I got one final text from her mother. She said she owed me an apology, that she believed her daughter without question and said things she shouldn't have, that she now knew the truth. She asked me not to respond. I didn't. I just saved the message and moved on. Here's where everything landed. She's pregnant, with her coworker's child. He's divorced, lost his house, barely sees his kids. They're not together. Her family knows the truth. Her workplace knows the truth. The sympathy money? People asked for it back. As for me, I changed my number, blocked everyone connected to her, filed every document away in a safe place. And yeah, this whole thing messed with me more than I like to admit. There were nights I lay awake thinking about how close I came to being legally responsible for a child that wasn't mine, how easy it would have been if I didn't have proof, if I just tried to do the right thing without asking questions. That's the part that still gets me. Most people don't have medical records that airtight. Most people would have been trapped. For years. For 18 years. The cancer I survived when I was 11 took a lot from me. For a long time, I only saw it as loss. But in a twisted way, it also gave me the one thing she couldn't argue with: proof. So if there's anything I take away from this, and anything I hope you take away too, it's this. Document everything. Ask questions, and never let guilt replace truth. Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and someone else's lie is evidence. Thanks for listening.